Now, there is a blueprint for what to do in this fight. There's a blueprint for what to do and what not to do going into this fight if you're Jorge Masvidal. Because there was a fight similar to this one a while ago. GSP versus Nick Diaz. Now, you might be thinking, Sam, how's that a blueprint for this fight? Because GSP beat Nick Diaz. He won a unanimous decision. He put a clinic on him in a few rounds. That's true. But Nick actually had some good success against GSP. And after the fight, GSP's face was able to tell the tale. George's face had scars on it from battle. Nick was able to land some very good shots against George. He was able to stop some of his takedowns, and he was able to escape some. So the best round to look at, if you download the fight, if you bought the fight, the best round to look at to see what Jorge, I believe, can learn from to beat Kamaru would be round 3 of the fight. And if I want to give any round to Nick, I watch the fight again. But 3, I would call maybe a draw, maybe a slight edge towards Nick, because he actually did. I would have liked to have seen him put out more work and put more pressure out. But round 3, let's look at what he did there. He was able to escape one takedown, got up off of his feet. GSP only held him on the ground for about 20 seconds, where he was actually able to do something. I don't think he only landed about 3 punches. He was able to get up to his feet. He stopped 3 takedowns. And then with the last takedown that GSP finally got, he attempted a submission. But that was within the last 44 seconds of the round. Now, before that, Nick was able to stop the takedown, escape the first takedown, and then stuff more of them. And then as he stuffed him, he started to work his jab. The only problem that he really had to getting close is GSP was not just a wrestler. He was also a very good striker. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't even know that when he first came in, he was not a wrestler. He had to learn wrestling later on. So if we want to argue, the greatest welterweight wrestler, some people would say it probably is Tyron Woodley, but we saw Kamaru Usman beat Tyron Woodley at that game. And then a lot of people say, well, GSP, he's in the top 5 wrestlers of all time, not just any weight class, not just welterweight. So let's give that argument. GSP is probably the greatest wrestler even to this day in the welterweight class. Maybe, I don't know. I don't like to put a title on everybody because there's some other great fighters out there you haven't seen yet. But let's assume that. And Nick was able to stop most takedowns during that round and escape them. And within less than a minute, GSP finally was able to hold him on the ground. So about a minute of the time, he was able to keep him on the ground. But what did work for Nick when stopping him? He kicked the leg of GSP. And he also was able to hit the body when they were standing up, which wears the opponent down. Now, what does Jorge do in comparison to Nick right here? What worked for Nick? He was able to stuff it, he hit the body, and he was able to use his boxing to land damage. Right before the last takedown that GSP did, he wanted to stand with Nick. He started to land his jab, hit him in the face, but then Nick finally got to his rhythm in that last few moments, and he started to land 1-2s back to back. And the nose was bleeding very bad of George, which, that started working in his favor. That's why he took him down, because he didn't want to keep losing the fight. And he even said at the end he didn't want to stand and box with him because of how good he was. So he decided to take him down. What weapon does Jorge have that Nick rarely, sadly, but rarely ever uses in that case? And that would be the knee. Now, the knee I like because it's like a super weapon to use against wrestlers. Three good examples recently: Jorge versus Ben, where he just annihilated him in the first 5 seconds. But there are two other examples that we can look at, and that is Yoel Romero versus Chris Weidman. As Weidman went for the takedown, boom, flying knee, knockout. Matt Hughes, another great wrestler in the welterweight division. Thiago Savas, flying knee, knocked him down. The reason it's a good weapon, I believe, for 2 reasons. One, it puts you in a good position because the way your legs are positioned, you could sprawl if you were to miss. Now, if you go too far past, they can get double-legged and they can take you down. When Yoel Romero jumped, I don't think him missing would have been an option because he would have been over Chris, but he's also a good wrestler, so he have to worry about that much being taken down. But it's 50-50. If it hits clean, it can end the fight right away. If it misses, they could grab you. But there's a third factor. If it just grazes the opponent, because people act like that's the first time Jorge threw that. He throws that a lot. In a lot of his fights, he throws a flying knee. And a couple times he's tapped people with it lightly, then he threw another one right back to it. And then he rocked him, then took him down and beat on him some more. So he has that weapon. That's one thing that he has that Nick rarely ever uses. I've seen him in a 5-round fight probably like throw 3 knees, and maybe one has some real steam behind it. The other thing is the body work. Nick landed about one really good left or right, sorry, I don't remember, in round 3 to the body of GSP, and it actually moved him. Now, Jorge throws a ton of body kicks, which is what I wish I would see more people do, but he throws a whole lot of body kicks. And he can use that to keep the opponent at a distance, and it also, body kicks get you tired really fast. You know, if you've ever been hit in the body before, have somebody hit you with the medicine ball, and you'll see how it does take wind out of you. When you stand back up, you're like, oh, wow, I feel it now. So it takes wind out, and the person can get tired as the fight goes on and on. So he's got body kicks that Nick did not use. He's got a flying knee that, you know, and knees period, that Nick hardly and rarely ever uses. He's also got leg kicks, and on the ground, he's also good at escaping. He's very good at sweeping his opponent to get back to his feet. Now, against Demian Maia, a fight that I actually thought that he did better in, that people give him credit for, he was able to escape, I believe, all those takedowns. I might have to rewatch it. I might be wrong. He might have held down once. But if I recall correctly, he was able to escape all of them and get back to his feet. Now, I do think Kamaru is much stronger than Demian Maia as far as wrestling goes. But I do think their strength is similar. You know, Maia's strong enough. He's choked people out with one arm before. And the guys are much younger than he is and very strong. But he's tapped people out with one arm. Kamaru is also very strong in that area as well. But striking is definitely going to be an advantage for Jorge. And he has additional weapons that I didn't see Nick using against GSP, who people will argue is the greatest welterweight of all time, or definitely one of the greatest wrestlers in the sport, and definitely in the welterweight division. And he was able to keep it stand up for about 4 minutes of that entire fight. Inside of 4 minutes, how much damage can you do if you're Jorge? And also the attitude. He's extremely hungry for the belt going in there. So that, I believe, is one way he could do it. He should build on that strategy of not just stop it, not thinking, oh, I can stop all the takedowns only, just like with Khabib. I think that's a bad idea. Don't try to stop all of them. But also, what a lot of people don't do when they're fighting a wrestler who's known for dominant wrestling is try to put him on his back. You know, I heard one guy say one time, if you take a black belt, you punch him in the head, you turn him into a brown belt. You punch him again, you turn him to a green belt. Not positive what all the colors are. The point is, each time you take him down and hit him, you're wearing him down so he's not as good as he was at the beginning. And that's actually a good idea. You know, try taking him down. You know, Jorge trains with Yoel Romero, who's a very good wrestler. He did do a different style of wrestling, though, which one of the reasons it's hard for him to hold his opponents down, because it wasn't the best to transition to MMA with. But he definitely has wrestling experience. He knows how to wrestle. So it's not impossible for him to put the wrestler on his back. That's also another option he could take. But sticking specifically, using the GSP versus Nick Diaz, round 3 especially, and watching that fight using it as a strategy, I believe that's one way he could beat him. Especially since he adds a lot more leg work, literally. He adds a lot more leg kicks to the body. He has, and that wears the opponent down. He's got very good sweeps to get out of that situation. And he's got very good boxing. He's got very good head movement, which is something that Nick, you know, when he would box defensively. He would block a lot. Jorge likes to move his head, get completely out. We saw in his fight against Nate when he was up against the cage, he would duck down, slip out. Rose Namajunas also does very well at that. She's got some of my favorite head movement. But he would get down, he would get out. Changing angles a whole lot. And when you change an angle on a fighter, they got to change their setup for their shoot. So if you're timing them on their shoots, as they go in, bam, you know, you leg kick them, you give them a good leg kick, you lift their leg out of the way. They've got to reset before they can shoot again. And it's possible to knock them out within that time. Does Kamaru have a good chin? Yes. But, you know, not anybody out there is invincible. Everybody out there can lose the fight. You know, they say anything can happen. But when you actually go in there with a strategy and you execute that strategy, you're much more likely to win. So that is the strategy I would be looking at, and I would be training a whole lot on the ground and training to get back up. The gas tank is going to be a huge factor here because, like I said, Jorge has good sweeps and he has good, very good stand-up, and he actually does know how to wrestle. And I think people who say he's not practicing for his wrestling, that's just ludicrous. Why would you not be preparing to go against a guy who came from a wrestling background, who is on a long winning streak in fights, and not prepared to wrestle him? And then you saw what he did against Tyron Woodley. Now, he did say that he believes that focused Tyron Woodley would beat Kamaru. I do think that if Tyron Woodley's hands go, he would have performed much better and probably would have been more likely to beat him. But the point is, he's watching him. He's studying him. And he's planning on beating him. So That's just my take on it. I believe that if you watch Diaz versus GSP, especially round 3, you can see a very good strategy to beat a very similar guy in Kamaru.